He was just an engineer on a forgotten orbital scrapyard, someone who fixed cracked seals and patched cheap life support with cheaper tape. So when he found a dying warrior drifting in the wreckage, he did what engineers do. He solved the problem in front of him. He didn't know her blood carried an empire. He didn't know the warrior was the one being hunted by entire fleets. And he definitely didn't know that by saving her, he was about to become the most dangerous man in the galaxy. Story, start narrative. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Out in the Graven Belt, silence wasn't absence, it was pressure. The kind that settled into your bones when your suit radio hissed nothing back. When the only sound was your own breath, too loud in your helmet, and the slow, patient click of tether reels. My work drone, patched together from 3 different manufacturers and one bad decision, blinked its sensor light at me like it wanted to complain. "Yeah," I muttered, nudging it with a boot. "I know, we're late." Below us, the derelict ship hung like a dead whale, half its hull peeled open, ribs of titanium exposed to the stars. A skirmish had happened here recently. The belt always knew before the Corps did. The salvage license I carried, legit, stamped, and paid for twice, didn't say anything about fresh bodies. It just said recover usable material from abandoned wreckage. But my suit's thermal scanner didn't care what my license said. It painted a weak heat signature against the cold, small, flickering, and drifting away from the wreck like a loose thought. At first I assumed it was a power cell, a beacon, some overpriced piece of military trash I could sell to pay for oxygen filters that didn't taste like rust. Then I saw the shape. A person, armor sleek and dark, designed for movement not bulk, a cracked visor, a slow tumble, limbs loose. No thruster flashes, no distress ping. Just a body quietly forgetting it had ever belonged to anyone. I reeled myself in hand over hand, tether taut between me and the derelict. The drone followed, clumsy but loyal. When I reached her, the first thing I did wasn't heroic, it was practical. I grabbed the collar of her suit and found the emergency latch. "No offense," I said through the helmet mic, "but if you're dead, you're about to become a problem." Her suit's status strip glowed a faint amber, life signs present. Barely. Okay. That changed things. I tapped my wrist pad, overriding the auto ethics warnings. The suit's medical seal screamed at me in red text, "Unauthorized opening may void warranty," which was the galaxy's way of telling you it cared more about money than breath. I popped the latch. Her visor cracked wider. Inside, her face was pale and tight with pain, lips slightly parted. A smear of blood floated at the edge of her mouth, globbing in the microgravity. Her eyes were open, and impossibly calm. Not the calm of someone fine. The calm of someone who'd already decided the universe didn't get to rush her. She looked at me and tried to speak. Only a thin rasp came out, lost in the vacuum until my suit translated the vibration through contact. "Believe." I hesitated. It was always a mistake in the belt to assume someone else's crisis was yours. You could get killed for kindness, or worse, bankrupted by it. But I'd spent my whole life patching holes other people pretended weren't there. So I did the math. Her oxygen was low. Her suit was compromised. She was drifting. If I left her, she'd die in minutes. If I helped her, she might still die, but at least I'd tried. I looked into her eyes again. There was something in them that didn't match the wreckage around us. Not fear, command. "Yeah," I said. "No." I pulled a rescue bubble from my suit pack, cheap polymer rated for 3 hours if you didn't move too much. I wrapped her in it, sealed it, then clipped her to my tether. The drone whirred disapprovingly. "Don't start," I told it. "I'm not hauling her for fun. I'm hauling her because I have a conscience and you don't." Her gaze stayed on me as I pulled us back toward my skiff, a patched salvage shuttle with a reputation for not exploding on takeoff. It wasn't a good reputation, but it was the best I could afford. As we crossed the distance, her breathing stuttered. She clenched her jaw like she was angry at her own blood. I didn't know who she was. But I knew she was stubborn enough to survive if I gave her a chance. My workshop smelled like ozone and old coolant. It was the sort of place people imagined engineers lived, cluttered, half-lit, and full of tools that looked like they could remove limbs as easily as they removed bolts. I laid her on my med bench, which was mostly a reinforced table I'd bolted into the floor after the last time a pressure swing threw my entire inventory into the ceiling. When I cut away her armor plating, my hands slowed. Her suit was military grade, not belt militia, not even private security. The weave beneath the plating had microfilaments that adapted to impact, and the inner lining carried medical nanofluid channels. This wasn't something you bought in a station market. This was something you were issued by the kind of authority that didn't ask permission. She had a wound under her ribs, a puncture, clean, too precise to be shrapnel. It had cauterized at the edges, which meant energy blade or thermal spike. Someone had tried to kill her quietly, not in the chaos of battle. I swore under my breath and grabbed my injector. She watched every movement I made, even as her eyelids fluttered. "You're lucky," I said, mostly to fill the air with something that wasn't panic. "I'm not a doctor, I just fix what breaks." Her lips twitched like she found that funny. Then she coughed, and blood speckled the rescue bubbles inside. "Not lucky," she rasped. "Mistake." "Maybe," I said, and started working anyway. I flushed the wound, sealed internal bleeding with foam gel, and set my bench's medical arm to stitch the torn muscle. The bench beeped warnings at me, unregistered patient/unknown species variant, but her physiology looked close enough to human that the tools complied. While I worked, I kept glancing at her face. No tattoos, no obvious rank marks. But there was a subtle scar at her temple, a circular line like an implant had once been there and removed. And on her wrist, half hidden by blood, a thin band of metallic ink shaped like a broken halo. A symbol. I'd seen it once in a propaganda broadcast someone had pirated into the belt. The mark of the regent, the figurehead ruler of the coalition, supposedly a distant monarch who never appeared in person. I'd laughed at it at the time. Everyone did. The Corps liked its myths. Now I wasn't laughing. I finished the last stitch and leaned back, hands shaking a little from the adrenaline dump. "Okay," I said. "You're not dying in the next 10 minutes. That's my guarantee. Anything after that is between you and the universe." Her eyes stayed on me, sharp, measuring. "Name," she said. "Eli," I replied. "Eli Sato, salvage and maintenance. I fix things people throw away." "Why?" she asked. It was the simplest question in the galaxy, and the hardest. I shrugged, uncomfortable. "Because if nobody does, we all suffocate eventually." For the first time, something softened in her expression. Not gratitude, something closer to recognition, like she'd heard a truth she'd forgotten existed. "Your station," she murmured, voice thinning. "What is it called?" "Null Harbor," I said. "And before you ask, no, it's not on any tourist map." She exhaled, long and slow. "Good." Then her gaze flicked to the doorway, to my security panel, to the wall sensors I'd built from scrap. "You're prepared," she said. I snorted. "Out here, preparedness is just another word for paranoia with good timing." She closed her eyes, and I realized with a chill that she wasn't relaxing, she was listening. The hairs on my arms rose beneath my coveralls. I turned my head slowly and looked at my station's external monitors. The black outside was never empty. It only pretended to be. A tiny blink appeared on the edge of sensor range. Not a rock, not a drone, a ship, then another. Then three more sliding into formation like predators that didn't need to hurry. No transponder, no broadcast, just stealth hulls and intent. My stomach dropped. "What did you bring to my door?" I whispered. Her eyes opened again, calm as ever. "Consequences," she said. I shut down all external beacons, killed station lights, sealed internal doors. Null Harbor became what it had been designed to be, a shadow. I'd built the station out of a gutted ore refinery bought cheap after a bankruptcy wave. It wasn't pretty, but it had thick plating and old industrial shielding that could confuse newer scanners. I'd kept it that way on purpose. The belt didn't reward bright targets. The ships outside didn't care about my precautions. They drifted closer. My monitor struggled to resolve them. Their silhouettes were wrong, too smooth, too deliberate. The kind of hull you designed when you could afford to care about angles and radar ghosts. Not pirates, not the local militia. Something official. Or something pretending to be. I glanced back at the woman on my bench. She had tried to push herself up. Her arm trembled, but her eyes stayed steady. She was injured, but she carried herself like injury was an inconvenience, not a limit. "You need to hide," I told her. "No," she said, "you do." "That doesn't make sense." "It will," she replied, and then winced as pain caught up. She swallowed it like an insult. "They won't come for you unless you stand in their way." I stared. "They're literally at my door." Her gaze didn't waver. "They are not here for salvage." I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was floating in front of my face like debris in a sunbeam. I exhaled through my teeth. "Okay, fine, if they're here for you, what are my options?" She watched me for a long moment, as if weighing the value of my life against hers. Then quietly, "Let me die." The words hit harder than any threat. I stepped closer to the bench until I was in her line of sight. "No." A flicker, genuine surprise crossed her face. "You don't know what you're refusing," she said. I leaned on the bench, voice low. "I know what I'm accepting. I don't leave people drifting." Her eyes searched mine, not like a romantic scene, like a commander evaluating a tool. Then she said, "If you help me, you will lose the life you have." I almost laughed. "What life? I patch air scrubbers and argue with vending machines that don't recognize my credits." That earned the smallest curve of her lips. Then the station trembled, just a soft vibration through the floor. Something had latched onto my outer airlock, a boarding clamp. My drone beeped urgently from its charging cradle. "All right," I muttered. "They're coming in." I went to my locker and pulled out the only weapon I owned, a bolt driver with a modified capacitor. It could punch through thin plating at close range. It was meant for stubborn machinery, not people. I checked the monitor again. The boarding clamp's heat signature crawled along my lock like a parasite. Behind me, the woman's voice cut through the hum. "Eli." I turned. She held out her hand, trembling but deliberate. In her palm was a small disc, black and featureless, no bigger than a coin. "I can authorize a coalition response," she said, "but not from here, not with my signal compromised." My throat tightened. "Coalition response? You said you weren't." She met my eyes. And something in that look made the station feel suddenly too small. "My name," she said, "is Lyra Voss." That name meant nothing to me. Then she added, softer, like it pained her to say it, "I am the Regent." The galaxy shifted, not metaphorically. My sense of reality actually lurched, as if the floor had tilted and my brain needed a second to catch up. I began, then stopped because my mouth didn't know how to finish. The Regent was a legend. A distant ruler who signed treaties and ended wars with a word. A symbol on banners. A face never shown clearly, always masked, always for security. People in the belt joked that the regent was an algorithm, or a council, or a corpse propped up by bureaucrats. But here she was on my workbench, bleeding into my cheap foam gel. My fingers tightened around the bolt driver. Outside, the boarding clamp heated my lock like a brand. I forced myself to speak. "If you're the regent, why are you alone?" Her expression darkened, because someone decided the galaxy would be easier to own without me. The station shuddered again. A thin line of light appeared on the airlock seam. Cutting tools, they were slicing their way in. I swallowed hard. "Okay, Regent, Your Majesty, whoever you are, tell me what to do." Lyra's gaze sharpened, the commander returning. "Give me the disc." I stepped close. She pressed it to my palm. It felt warm, alive with encrypted charge. "This is a dead man key," she said. "If it pairs to your station core, it can broadcast a single message through the old refinery relay buried in your hull. An emergency code, one that only my loyal fleets will answer." "Loyal fleets," I echoed faintly. "Yes," she said, "but the message will reveal your location." I glanced at the airlock seam, now glowing brighter as they cut faster. "They're revealing it anyway," I said. A flicker of approval crossed her face. "Pair it," she ordered. "Then get me to the service tunnels." "Your station is industrial. There will be routes too small for boarding teams in armor." "You're assuming I have service tunnels." She stared at the mess of cables, the reinforced walls, the patchwork repairs. "I'm not assuming," she said. "I'm observing." Fair. I sprinted to my core console and slammed the disk into the manual interface port. My screen flashed. Unrecognized authority, verify. I hesitated, finger hovering. If this was a trap, I was about to paint a target on my own soul. Then I remembered her eyes in the vacuum, calm, determined, refusing to beg. I hit verify. The station lights flickered. A low tone vibrated through the hull, older than my station, older than my salvage license. The refinery relay woke up like a forgotten god. On the monitor, a thin signal spike punched out into the dark, broadcast sent. Then every sensor on my board screamed as the ships outside reacted. They weren't surprised. They were prepared. "Move," Lyra said, voice tight with pain. I ran back to her bench, grabbed her under the shoulders, and hauled her up. She bit back a sound, jaw clenched, but she didn't fight me. We moved fast, down my corridor, past the coolant tanks, into the maintenance bay where the service hatch waited behind a wall panel. Behind us, metal shrieked. The airlock gave way. Boots hit my floor. Voices, filtered, professional, echoed through the station. "Target is inside, sweep and secure, no witnesses." No witnesses. I felt my blood turn cold. I shoved Lyra into the service hatch and dropped in after her, sealing the panel behind us just as a beam of light swept over the bay. We crawled through the narrow tunnel, the air thick with dust and old insulation. My station groaned as boarding teams spread through it like a virus. Lyra's breathing grew harsher. Every movement cost her. "Stay with me," I whispered. She laughed, soft and humorless. "You're giving orders to the Regent now?" "Right now you're a patient," I snapped. "I'm the only idiot here who knows where the pipes go." Silence then. "Fair." We reached a junction where the tunnel split. I paused. Above us, footsteps clanged on the deck plating. They were close. I knew my station like I knew my own scars. I also knew its weaknesses, the places I'd put off fixing because the patch would have been expensive. An idea sparked, ugly and beautiful. I glanced at a pipe cluster marked Co-2 scrub loop. I smiled grimly. Engineers didn't win wars with hero speeches. We won by turning the environment into a problem the enemy couldn't solve fast enough. I pulled my multi-tool, opened the panel, and rerouted the scrub loop's exhaust into the maintenance ducts. Lyra watched, eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Making their helmets lie," I said, her eyebrows lifted. I sealed the panel and started crawling again. "Their suit sensors will read oxygen normal, but their CO2 filters will clog twice as fast. They'll get dizzy, sloppy. And if they remove their helmets?" She asked. I bared my teeth. "Then they'll learn what belt air tastes like when it's angry." We reached the station's old refinery control room, a hollow chamber tucked in the spine of the hull. It still held the original relay interface, ancient and stubborn. Lyra collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. I slapped the control panel, bringing up the broadcast status. A response ping blinked, then another. Then a flood coded acknowledgments, military-grade, crisp. Ships were coming. But so were the boarders. A thud shook the hatch behind us. They'd found the service routes. "Eli," Lyra said, voice suddenly softer. "Listen to me." I turned. Her eyes held mine, and this time there was no command in them, only truth. "You could still run," she said. "They might let you live if you surrender me." I stared at her. "You think people who say no witnesses bargain?" She flinched, not from pain, from the reality. I took a breath. "I'm not handing you over." "Why?" she asked, and for the first time she sounded tired. "Why would you die for a stranger?" I looked at the relay panel, at the blinking acknowledgments, at the station that had been my whole world. Then I looked back at the woman who secretly ruled the galaxy and was bleeding in my dust. "Because," I said quietly, "if the galaxy is the kind of place where someone like you gets hunted in silence, then it needs fixing." A crash interrupted us. The hatch buckled inward. A voice echoed through the metal, amplified. "Regent Voss, you are ordered to stand down. Your authority has been revoked by emergency decree. Surrender and you will be treated with dignity." Lyra's face turned to stone. "That's Admiral Kest," she said low. "My own security chief." I felt sick. "So he's the coup?" "Yes," she said, "and he knows my codes." The hatch tore open. 3 armored figures pushed in, weapons raised, visors reflecting the room's dim light. Their rifles were sleek, expensive, designed to kill clean. I raised my Bolt driver, hands shaking. The lead soldier's helmet tilted toward me. "You," the voice said, "step aside." I didn't. Behind me, Lyra forced herself upright. Her wound soaked fresh blood into my station's grime, but her posture snapped into something regal, an invisible crown settling on her head. "Admiral Kest," she called out, voice carrying. "You will withdraw." The lead soldier hesitated just a fraction, not because of fear, because instinct still recognized her authority. Then another voice came through their comms, colder. "Execute." The soldiers lifted their rifles. I acted before my courage could question itself. I slammed my palm onto the refinery relay's manual override. The old industrial system obeyed with the enthusiasm of a beast finally allowed to bite. Every emergency vent in Null Harbor opened at once. A roar of pressured gas screamed through the station. The boarders staggered, thrown off balance. Their suits tried to compensate, but my scrub loop sabotage hit them at the same time, sensors lying, filters clogging, breath turning thick. One soldier fired wildly. The beam scorched the wall inches from my head. I dove, grabbed a loose conduit, and yanked. A panel sparked, high voltage arcing across the floor. Armor was good against bullets. It was worse against an engineer's bad wiring. Two soldiers convulsed and dropped, their rifles clattering. The third soldier lunged forward, slower now, head tilting as Co-2 fogged his judgment. Lyra moved. Even wounded, she was still a warrior. She stepped into his reach, caught his wrist, and twisted. The rifle spun away. She drove her elbow into his throat seal, cracking it. He collapsed, choking. She stood over him, shaking, blood on her knuckles. For a heartbeat, we just breathed. Then the station's sensors screamed again, not warning this time, but recognition, ships dropping out of stealth. Not the boarders' ships, bigger, heavier, fleet signatures, and on the comm panel an encrypted channel opened automatically. A voice came through, steady and reverent. "Regent Voss," it said. "This is Commander Aaron Toller of the 9th Loyal Fleet. We have your signal. We are inbound. Give us your coordinates." Lyra's eyes closed for half a second, like relief hurt. Then she looked at me. And there it was, unmistakable now, gratitude, not the polite kind. The kind that comes from someone who didn't expect mercy and received it anyway. She reached for the comm, but her hand trembled too much, so I stepped in and spoke into the channel. "This is Null Harbor," I said. "Docking clamps are compromised and I've got hostile boarders in my hallways. If you're coming, come loud." A pause, then Commander Tala replied, voice edged with something like a smile. "Understood, Null Harbor. Loud it is." Outside, the first Loyal Fleet ship lit its engines. And for the first time in my life, the stars around my little scrapyard looked like they belonged to something bigger than emptiness. The fighting didn't last long after that. Loyal Marines poured through the hull breaches, efficient and disciplined, cutting down Kest's operatives with brutal speed. Null Harbor shook with the impact of real war, and I realized my station had never been tested, only tolerated by the universe. When it was over, the corridor outside my workshop was scorched and littered with dropped weapons. The air tasted like metal and burnt insulation. Lyra sat on my med bench again, this time surrounded by actual doctors in clean uniforms. They tried not to stare at the grime under her nails, but their hands trembled as they worked. She waved them away once her vitals stabilized. Then she asked for me. I entered cautiously, wiping oil from my hands. Suddenly I felt aware of how small my life was, how ridiculous my patched jacket looked under the gaze of an empire. Lyra looked different, not less dangerous, just more present. "You saved me," she said. "I patched you," I corrected. "Big difference," her lips curved. "Engineers always downplay their work," I shrugged. "If we believed our own hype, we'd start charging politicians." Her gaze softened again. "Eli Sato, do you understand what you did?" "I made myself a target," I said. "Yeah," she nodded once. "Admiral Kest's decree was already spreading. If he had killed me here, he would have crowned himself with my silence." She leaned forward slightly, eyes sharp. "But you broke that. You forced the galaxy to look." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said the truth. "I didn't do it for the galaxy," I admitted. "I did it because you were dying in front of me." For a moment, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of medical equipment. Then Lyra reached out and placed her hand over mine. Her palm was warm, human, real. "Then you did it for the right reason," she said. I swallowed. "What happens now?" She studied me, and in that look I saw the weight she carried, fleets, laws, billions of lives, and the loneliness of being a symbol. "You can't go back to being unnoticed," she said gently. "Kest will have allies. There will be more attempts." My stomach tightened. "So I'm doomed." A small, tired smile. "Not doomed." She lifted her wrist, revealing the broken halo mark. Then, right there in my oil-stained workshop, she pressed her thumb to her wristband and spoke a command phrase in a language my translator didn't recognize. The band shimmered and projected a holographic seal, ancient, intricate, and absolute. The Regent's writ. "By authority vested in the Regent," she said, voice now carrying that unmistakable force, "I appoint Eli Sato of Null Harbor as Chief Systems Architect to the Coalition throne." I stared, mind blank. "You're hiring me?" "I'm protecting you," she corrected. "And I'm making sure the galaxy never forgets that an engineer saved its ruler with scrap tools and stubbornness." I blinked. "I'm not qualified to—" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You rerouted an industrial relay to outsmart a boarding team in less than a minute." "That was panic," I protested. "That," she said, "was brilliance under pressure." She leaned back, voice quieter now. "I need people near me who don't worship the throne, people who will argue, people who fix what's broken instead of pretending it is." I looked around my workshop, the mess, the patched walls, the drone blinking like it wanted to file a complaint. Then I looked at her, the secret ruler of the galaxy, a dying warrior I'd hauled in from the cold. And I realized something terrifying. She wasn't offering me a job. She was offering me a chance to rewrite the kind of galaxy that produced men like Kest and stations like mine. I exhaled slowly. "Okay," I said, "but I'm keeping my tools." Lyra laughed, quiet, real, and full of something that sounded like hope. "Agreed," she said. "The throne has plenty of weapons." Her gaze met mine. "But it could use an engineer." And that's how a forgotten salvage station in the Graven Belt became the place where a coup died and a new era began. Because in the end, empires don't survive on power alone. They survive on the people willing to fix what's broken, even when the whole galaxy tells them to look away.